So at Particl, we believe that the future is private. You could take Google, Facebook, Amazon, Uber, like basically any big company, it has probably happened to them, data breaches. And data breaches happen for mostly two reasons. The first is that we really don't understand the internet as well as we think we do. We don't understand its capabilities, its potential, its dangers, nearly as well as we think we do. So there is a severe lack of security and a lack of sense of awareness of that, a sense of urgency to fix it. Secondly, it's because of malicious intent, case in point Cambridge Analytica. So our data is worth money, and where money can be made, money will be made, and that goes up until the point of exploitation, really. So we believe that the future is private because we are starting to care. There's awareness, and awareness is growing, especially with recent events. So we think that we came from private by default, so a world before the internet, to being overly exposed, which is kind of the internet today, and that we're going to go back to private, but this time by choice. And we see a lot of people have tried that already. For example, PayPal originally wanted to create an independent, like an internet currency. What happened is PayPal is a company, PayPal is centralized, so they got regulated, so they failed. And like them, a lot of projects, a lot of attempts failed in reaching this independence and in creating, like taking back this privacy and this control. So we've she reached this point where it's widely accepted that we live in a state of surveillance and that we can go online, but we have to accept that somebody's watching us. And that shouldn't be, but it's like without alternative, right? Up until the point where an anonymous person, a private person, emerged in a mailing list, presented the proposal for Bitcoin. And the concept, well, you probably all know, it's really simple. It's a peer-to-peer currency. So it's not owned by any one company, by any one entity. That means there is no one company that can take control. There is no one company that can be regulated, that can be charged, or that can be shut down. And that means that we have an option to opt into this independent ecosystem. And that's extremely powerful. And this vision is what we support at Particl and what we want to build on top of. So rather than competing against Bitcoin, Particl's team aims to enhance, to complement Bitcoin. So under Bitcoin's umbrella of stability, security, its long-livedness, its anti-fragility, we're aiming to add some of what we feel are missing puzzle pieces in this concept and this vision. And by that, I mean these two. So the first one being privacy. Bitcoin is not anonymous in that sense. It's pseudonymous in that if you use Bitcoin, you never reveal your identity, you're good. But if at one point in time you reveal your identity for whatever reason, you cash out using a service that has KYC or whatever, your transactions are going to be traceable back to you. That makes it pseudonymous, not anonymous. The second puzzle piece would be the decentralized ecosystem. So Bitcoin is decentralized money. Decentralized money needs a decentralized infrastructure. If you run it on a centralized infrastructure, it makes no sense. It defeats the purpose. So right now, if you want to buy something with Bitcoin, the odds are largely against you that you're going to be able to randomly go somewhere, pay with Bitcoin. That's normal because we're still so early in the space, but it has to go somewhere from here, right? So what you can do is you can cash out, you can sell your Bitcoin, you can use fiat to buy something, but that's not buying stuff with Bitcoin, that is buying stuff with fiat. So this is where we come in and where we try to find a solution. So the first thing that Particl describes is the privacy coin part, which you might know. It's built on the Bitcoin core code base, which is what I mentioned briefly earlier. So it benefits from all these features and all the recent updates of the Bitcoin core code base. So its scalability, its stability, its security, and so on. It has SegWit enabled, so it's Lightning Network compatible. It's a proof of stake coin with code staking enabled. I put passive income opportunities there, but I'm not going to go into detail on that because we're going to have 2 talks on that later, right? Okay, so that's gonna go into more detail on that later on. It has ring CT on testnet, confidential transactions on mainnet, and you can, which facilitates the private factor, and you can store part on your favorite cold wallet, hardware wallet, the Nano Ledger. That's should be your favorite because they have some history with CoinHouse. I just heard they were born here. Yeah, which is really cool. The desktop app is where you can access all these applications. We have it over there. You can play around in it. Actually, it's downloadable and working. It's kind of like your App Store or like your Google Play Store through which you access all the apps that are on the platform. So yeah, that's it. And now I'm going to go to the marketplace, which is the actual reason we're here today. It's the first app on the platform, and it's also homemade, so it's made by the Particl team themselves. Why a marketplace is a very simple reason, actually, because if Bitcoin is decentralized money, then having a decentralized marketplace is like one of the logical next steps, or so we think, because you need a place to spend it, like you need this ecosystem. So what is a decentralized marketplace? To answer that, maybe we ask what a centralized marketplace is. It's basically Amazon, eBay, Alibaba, Etsy, whatever, basically almost any e-commerce platform that we know today. Decentralized marketplace in that sense means you have eBay but without the company behind it. So it's not run by any company or any single entity. And that makes sense because well, why would you need that? You could say because having centralized marketplaces right now doesn't mean it's the perfect solution. It's simply the only solution we've known so far. It's basically without alternative, but it's not without room for improvement. And I put up a couple of reasons as to why. First one is the fees. So we heard it a lot, but a centralized marketplace like Amazon, for example. Sorry, I'm always pulling up Amazon, but it's just the easiest example at this point. What they do is they take care that our trades, that our purchases and sales, that they go all right. So if a problem occurs, they take care of it. They're like this trusted party in the middle that we need. Without them, we couldn't do trades online. Like if I want to sell something to Ben, and he's here in the same room with me, it's no problem. But the moment we're in different locations, I don't know if he's gonna, rip me off, he's gonna run off with my money or whatever. So we need this third party, and that's what they do. They don't do that for charity though, so they take fees. And there are a bunch of different fees. I'm gonna show you that in another graphic later. But yeah, so you pay the platform, you pay the payment processor like PayPal, Visa, MasterCard, whatever. That can get very expensive. It's usually hidden though from the buyer. So for a vendor, it's pretty straightforward. They go, okay, these are the fees I have to pay. I'm just gonna raise my prices and offset that loss, basically. And the buyer pays more. The second reason that I put up today is geographical restrictions or payment limitations. For example, you want to buy something, but it only ships within the US, or you want to buy something, but you have no bank account, which if you're a crypto person, it's a real issue. We're not very, very much very aware of that here, but it is a thing, right? So if you want to use a centralized marketplace, you have to play along their rules, and they have to play along the rules of their respective jurisdiction, which results in these kinds of limitations. And then the third one is, obviously, I didn't put it there, but it means our data. So, well, it's a thing, right? If you want to get online, you want to buy something, sell something, use these platforms, you can do that, but you have to accept that they collect and that they share your data and that you pay with your privacy, really. And that's nothing new. Because what we think happens is we sign up on Amazon and we get this really long sheet of terms and conditions and so on. And we could read it, but it doesn't really make any sense, because if you're not okay with it, it's not like you can file a dispute or anything. You can, like, your only alternative is to just not use the platform. But there's no real alternative to centralized marketplaces. So yeah, you have to use it and you go like, okay, maybe I'll get some targeted ads. I can deal with that. What really happens, though, is this again. So our data is not safe, and our trusted third parties cannot be trusted. And that's a real issue. Hackers get access to our data, time and time again. Or internal negligence results in the loss, in the exposure of data. So our data is used in ways that we don't know, that we don't consent with, but there's not really anything we can do about it. Has anyone seen this whole scandal? Or this? There's lots of these kinds of examples, but it's really about Amazon copying items and selling them and stealing sales from other vendors. Let's say you are this vendor on the top here who comes up with a laptop stand, and you go through this month-long process of coming up with the idea, designing it, testing materials, researching the market, all of that, and eventually you can upload your listing to Amazon. You pay the fees, you sell it, and what happened in this case, for example, is Amazon's algorithms saw, hey, this item is trending, this item is selling really well. Amazon put a supplier on this item. They copied it, maybe made a couple little changes, re-uploaded it on the platform as a featured item, so it's on top of the list. The original item gets pushed down maybe to a later page. They sell it cheaper, and the result is that the original vendor loses sales. Maybe a lot of them, maybe all of them. And I know this sounds very evil, but it's happening. And I'm not trying to paint the picture of like a textbook villain or anything. The thing is just that if it's kind of the natural consequence of giving like a ridiculous amount of power and control to an individual or a group of individuals over other individuals. Because we are greedy by nature, and if we have the chance to benefit, to profit, we are very likely to take advantage of that. That was a long intro, I'm sorry. I didn't want to do this doomsday scenario, but I wanted to get you into the mood. So now I'm going to talk about the marketplace, but now we know why we do that stuff. So I'm going to talk about a couple key components to the marketplace. There are 9 that we're going to talk about. Now it looks like a lot, but we're going to go through that very swiftly, I believe. So the first one is the Particl desktop app. We put a special focus on UI and UX, user interface, user experience there, because we believe that's what it comes down to in the end. And this is the place where you can access the marketplace, can access your wallet, see the other apps really. So as I said, it's like your app store. Then we get to the second point, which is the crypto agnosticism. So, well, you can have, I believe, you can have the greatest project in the world. If you entertain a my coin only kind of attitude, that's gonna kill you. That's not to your advantage really. So the marketplace, the open marketplace, is designed to accept multiple currencies. That is ideally done through atomic swaps, which Particl has had enabled for over a year now. But there are not a lot of coins that are compatible with atomic swaps today, and the ones that are have mostly very low liquidity, so that's an issue that needs to be resolved by a decentralized exchange gaining traction. But until then, sort of as a bridge option to say, we have partnerships like one with Changely, which is obviously less decentralized, but facilitates that sort of as a bridge option, or for coins that might never be atomic swaps compatible. This one is obviously, it's a key pillar of the project. It's the decentralized escrow. If you have a decentralized marketplace, you cannot have escrow agents because then it becomes centralized again. So the way we solve this is with the MAD escrow. MAD escrow stands for mutually assured destruction. And that basically means if you destroy yourself, you destroy me, you destroy yourself, or in this case, you scam me, you scam yourself. And that plays out like this. Gabriel goes on the marketplace, wants to buy FIFA, and finds a vendor that offers it for one part, which is a very good offer. And here's what happens. So when the vendor uploads their listing, they decide on a security deposit. And that can be up to 100% of the purchase price. So in this case, for the sake of convenience, I made it that. So your game costs one part, and the security deposit is one part as well. So what happens is Gabriel transfers the purchase price of one part plus the security deposit in this separate multi-signature address, which is like the escrow address. And the vendor at the same time deposits the same security deposit, so one part as well, resulting in 3 parts in this address. From here, it can go a couple different ways. I'm going to show you 2 potential scenarios here. First scenario is all goes well. You get the item, it works well, you're happy, and in that case, both sides are going to sign off the trade as successful. And if you do that, it's going to trigger this address to release the funds. So the purchase price for the item is going to go to the vendor, and the security deposits go back to either side. Happy days. Unhappy days are if something goes wrong. For example, the vendor doesn't send anything, or sends a broken game, or in this case, he sends you an indoor plant, and that's not what you wanted, so you're obviously not going to sign off the trade as successful. In this case, the vendor and Gabriel can talk it out, can say, hey, we need to fix this, and if you find a solution, that's great. If you don't find a solution and you're unhappy with it, you say, okay, I'm not going to sign this transaction off as successful. Then the funds get locked in escrow. And that means Gabriel loses the purchase price of one part plus the security deposit. The vendor loses the security deposit of one part and the item that they sent. And this system builds on the idea that both sides are interested in the trade going successful, going well, because it's their loss if it doesn't. It's about having skin in the game, really. So you want it to go well. It doesn't really make sense to scam one another. That's like the MAD escrow in a nutshell. That's the 4th point, I think, which is decentralized governance. So again, it's a big topic. I'm going to make it a bit short. Again, in the spirit of decentralization, the marketplace is not owned by anybody. That means there is no boss or no company that can say, hey, we're going to delist this, or we're going to censor this, or whatever. This power is laid back with the users who vote with their coin weight. So it's very small here, but as an example, as a user, you can say, hey, there's a flag here. You can flag and hide an item if you say, oh, that's inappropriate, or that's undesirable for whatever reason. And from there, if it reaches a certain threshold of downvotes, it's going to be removed from the marketplace. And in a similar fashion, there's going to be a Q&A feature and a vendor rating feature that's going to look a bit like Amazon, but it's going to be decentralized. We're halfway through at the 5th point, which is decentralized messaging. It's a messenger. It lets you. It's like an encrypted messaging feature. Lets you communicate between buyer and vendor, which is also going to be released as a standalone app. So you can download and use it as a messenger also outside the marketplace. And now I'm back with the fee thing that I talked about very briefly earlier. So yeah, there's a bunch of different fees that on a centralized marketplace that as a buyer you don't necessarily know about. because they don't want you to bother with it. They don't want you to know about that. So as a vendor, you're like, yeah, okay, but as a buyer, you just like shouldn't want to know, really. The Particl's open marketplace uses minimal fees, just enough to disincentivize spam. So here's just an example. The standard listing price for uploading a standard listing per day is 0.02 part, which is, I don't know how much right now, but it's a couple cents only, which doesn't change regardless of how many sales you have. So on centralized marketplaces, on eBay, I think it's 30 cents, Amazon up to $1. You have a per sale, per item fee. It means if you sell one item, you pay 30 cents. You sell 10 items, you pay $3. So that's a fee that you don't have on Particl's open marketplace. You don't have a subscription fee, you don't have a referral fee, and payment processing fee means, which is normally Visa, MasterCard, PayPal, whatever. It's just the usual crypto transaction fee, what you pay like when you make a normal crypto transaction. 7th point is bubbles, and bubbles is what we call the private markets within the marketplace. So they're private, unlisted, unsearchable. Anybody watch Pirates of the Caribbean? I was gonna say it's like Tortuga. It cannot be found except by the people who know where it is. Okay, never mind. So you need a market ID. You need the direct link to these bubbles in order to enter them, in order to access them. They're like the home of the private listings. And each bubble is also very likely to have their own little chat room, which is kind of going to help, create little communities in and on themselves. We're at the second last point, which is again privacy, which is about how we facilitate private transactions. So each transaction on the marketplace is anonymous by default. That is done through confidential transactions or ring CT. Ring CT is actually embedded in the Mad Escrow smart contract. So that means every transaction on the marketplace goes through the Mad Escrow is processed with ring CT. Then all files are stripped of all metadata. Metadata is traceable data. It's like embedded in files naturally. That's removed. And then IP addresses can be hidden very easily. You're saying can be because this is the only feature that's not enabled by default. That is because our team found that current options come with a lot of security compromises. So you could use Tor, but if you use Tor, that would require the user to keep it updated at all times, and updates on Tor often bear very high security risks. So the team is looking into options, into solutions, but that's the reason they're not haven't enabled it by default. As of now, Particl it's built with scalability in mind. So it has had a SegWit enabled since block 1, which according to our team's testing, it saves like 39% on transaction weight as compared to non-SegWit Bitcoin. It has bulletproofs enabled with ring CT, which saves like 70%. Images are stored off-chain, and they're also always doing research into scalability solutions. And that takes me to my last slide, and the end of my presentation. The reason I am confident in this idea and this concept, and the reason we are as a team, is I believe the same reason why people are confident in Bitcoin, which is because up until now, we've been like utterly at the mercy of big corporations, big companies, a couple very powerful people with ridiculous authority over the rest of the people. And that's because we appointed them. That's because we cannot trust each other, so we create entities, we put them in the middle to trust But these middlemen also are human beings, and human beings can't be trusted, so the system in and on itself is flawed, and it's breaking down, it's crumbling, and we see it all around the world in all different kinds of situations. The reason we had it this way is, again, it was without alternative for the longest time. There was no better way, really, until Bitcoin came up and removed this need to give so much power to one entity or to a minority over the rest of the people. Gives us the option to actually move towards an independent status, independent economy. The longer this lives, the longer this survives, the stronger it gets. And that really shows, I think, the belief in this and the need for this. And the same similar thing is happening with our privacy. So if we look at our privacy, we are at the hands of a couple very big organizations, corporations, handling our data, saying, yeah, you can use my platform, but I'm going to collect your data. You can use my service, but I'm going to share your data, sell it, whatever, make money with it. And that's the status quo. It should have never gotten this far, but that's just because we were without alternatives so far. And seeing that now technology might enable us to improve this, to find different solutions, I think that's a very powerful thing. And that's why we believe in this way of technology, and that's why we're working on this with Particl. And I'm sorry for this really long talk, but I hope you can take something away from it, and I will hand over to the next speaker. Thank you.